Martin, in the previous part, we got a little bit. You talked about you've been officially mad, and you talked about it in quite a glib sort of way. But you actually did have issues and had to spend a bit of time in the Priory. Was that to do with the pressures of work, or finding winners for people, or is it, what can you put it down to anything?
Well, the nature of depressive illness, which is something that I've lived with and had to cope with and have embraced, really, is that it's there's a degree of sensitivity about it. And by being open and hugely receptive to everything I see in the racing world, I've also been witness to some things I prefer not to see. Spike Milligan, who worked with depressive people for most of his life and was himself a manic depressive, used to say depressive people have a layer of skin missing. So we're open and exposed to wonderful sights of great beauty, but we're also open to some of the darker sides of things. And there's a degree of sensitivity. And in my case, the thing that led to my time away, as I call it, was the pace of my life. I was thinking nothing of doing 50,000 miles a year in the car. I remember regularly logging up 50, 60,000 miles to get to a race course. I was with the Sunday Times. I had a business that was turning over £1 million a year when that was an awful lot of money. I didn't have time to take stock. I was an adrenaline junkie. I was hanging out with Mel Smith and people who'd been hugely successful in their own world. And I, in my case, got burnout. And I woke up one morning and I literally could not get dressed. For no apparent reason, I couldn't get dressed. I couldn't put my shoes on. I couldn't put my trousers on. I couldn't put my shirt on. And I didn't know what had happened. And I went to see my GP, who fortunately could see me 2 hours later when I had obviously got dressed. And then he got someone to see me 2 hours after that, 2 in the afternoon. And the man in black, that's how he seemed to me. He was wearing a dark suit, had come from Roehampton, the Priory at Roehampton. And he said, we need you to come and stay with us for a while. I said, I can't, it's a Cambridgeshire on Saturday. And he said, no, you need to come. I said, well, can I come next week? He said, no, now. He said, you must come now, you need time away. And on and off for the next 6 months, I totally burnt out, and I hadn't recognised it myself, but he did, and the GP had, and I went through then the most enlightening experience of my life.
So when you recovered, was there a point when you had recovered and was it safe to sort of jump straight back in with that? Was there not a danger of the same thing repeating itself, or did you learn lessons from it and change the way you sort of lived?
That's a good question. I learned lessons from it in respect of my relationship with others. It's something that I've learned to live with, and you don't really recover from it as much. I mean, there's medication and there's therapy, and they're the two things that work together to help guide you through life. But I consider it to have been a gift. I'm not going to be someone who's going to, I don't want violins out over this. I consider it to be a gift because it enables me to see things that perhaps other people don't see. And I've turned it into a positive, and we're in a room sitting here at the moment where the majority of the books are on what's called mental illness, though I hate that expression. I hate that phraseology. But we're surrounded with books here on self-help and dealing with depressive illness. It's a way of shining despite it being called depression and the darkness, it's a light shining on the world around you. So I'm hugely privileged to have undergone that. And the joke was, in the Priory, us depressives had a great time. The addicts who lived in the other end of town, in the Priory, they had to go to sessions all the time and were miserable. We had a load of fun. I mean, I can share this little thing with you. We had open nights on Thursday, and we also thought we better put an act on for the guests. So we all put sheets on togas and started quoting Shakespeare like mad people out the windows. So the punter said something, and then when they all went home, we sat back and had coffee. We had a lot of fun there.
Now, there's a positive as well. Extra positive you've taken out of it. You've trained to be a counsellor. Is that because of, I assume, your experiences?
Yeah, I wanted to give it some structure, what I'd gone through, and it's something which, I mean, having 3 daughters and 7 grandchildren and a very large family, there's opportunities for the counselling to hopefully be productive and helpful. But I haven't officially trained as a counsellor. I've helped a couple of people unofficially. But yes, I did a course in counselling, which I'm not totally sure I should be involved with now because it's too close and personal.
Now, when you came back from that, was there still a business there to pick up again, or did you have to start from scratch again?
That was the extraordinary thing. My clients stayed with me. I wasn't running the business, but I had a team around me in those days. The business was then based in Ascot in Sunningdale High Street. And the team kept it going, and I delegated the job. I was still finding. I remember during that time, Dermot Weld with Vintage Crop won the Melbourne Cup, and I was let out one day. We were let out, and I was let out to a friend's house, and saw the Melbourne Cup was being. I think it was a week later, and I saw Vintage Crop was there. I said, "Oh, that'll win," and then I went back to the Priory, and that was enough for them all to send out Vintage Crop to the clients. So we were encouraged to keep away from our regular work when we were at Roehampton.
But were you allowed to watch Vintage Crop win? Did you get up and burn the midnight oil to see it win the Melbourne Cup?
No television. Not allowed.
Now, just the final thing on this subject. You say you woke up and you found yourself unable, in a bad way, unable to sort of even function, get up, get dressed.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, are there any warning signs that in hindsight people should maybe look out for before they get to that position?
In my case, I never saw it coming. I had no idea. It was a total shock to me. I was so high on my business and success that I didn't see it coming. But having said that, I see it in others sometimes, but in a subliminal way. I see people sometimes who I think it's not because of what they do, it's because of what they are. It's not a doing thing, it's a being thing. It's ontological, to use the correct word, ontos logos, from the Greek, to do with being. And I sometimes see someone who I think is at risk. And it's in their eyes, their manner, just little throwaway remark every so often. One of the dangerous things is if you see someone who appears indifferent. Because if they're in love or they hate something, that's an extreme. It's a passion. To hate is as much a passion as to love. But if they're indifferent, it means they've lost interest. There was a wonderful line in Cheers once where someone said, we all know the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And you occasionally see that.
Now, it was interesting because I've been reading your book on the mentality of horses, and you've got a lot of quotes in there. Yeah. Have you got a lot of quotes? Do you go to these quotes sometimes for...
I find them great comfort, yes. I mean, one of the best ones is coincidences is God's way of staying anonymous. I love that one. That's Einstein of all people. There's no road so long that has no turning. Dick Hearn told me that once during a losing run, Major Dick Hearn, the trainer. There's only 2 things in life, fear and love. And I think that's a good one, because most actions that people get involved with, or most behaviour, mannerisms, are love or fear based. You can trace, especially with racehorses. I sometimes see a horse and I think, oh, this is a love-based upbringing. Or with people, it's this person had a love-based upbringing or a fear-based upbringing. Not love and hate, it's love and fear.